angeli supradicti, est tote adiutores meae petizioni, in adiutorium mihi in meis rebus in petitionibus. O vos omnes adjuro, atque contestor per sedem, Adonai, per hagios, o theos, iscuros, athanatos, paracletos, alpha et omega, et par hectrien omnia secreta, acla on tetragrammaton, quod hodie de beatis ad implere, quod cupio. And so this is the beginning of the invocation from the Heptameron, the little grimoire, the little booklet attributed to the hands of Pietro d'Abano. Whether actually he was the one writing this grimoire or not is still debatable. I don't think actually he was the one writing, but nevertheless, I think it's worthy to take a look at the life of this man. I'm sure most of us have seen his name passing through, especially, of course, talking about the Heptameron, but most likely nobody actually took his time to investigate a little bit more in the very interesting life of this man. Pietro d'Abano, or Peter d'Abano, was born around 1250 something in the northern Italian city of Abano, from where he takes his name d'Abano. And it's a small city actually outside Padua. And what is really interesting about the life of Pietro d'Abano is that around 1270, so when he was around 20 years old, he decided to move to Greece to study, first of all, Greek language, in order to be able to read firsthand the works of Hippocrates, Aristotle, and Pythagoras. Furthermore, he didn't even stop there. After studying that part, he moved to Constantinople, he moved to Byzantium, where he studied with the Byzantine scholars. He wanted to learn the works of Avicenna and Averroes. As we know, Avicenna and Averroes are very Aristotelian kind of philosophers / scientists, especially both very strongly related to medical studies, medical research. In fact, Avicenna is also considered actually one of the father of the early modern medicine. So overall, he spent around 20 years between Greece and Constantinople. And after completing his studies, he decided to go back to Europe, and he went to La Sorbonne University in Paris, there to finish his to get the medical license, and he started there his medical practice, as well as he started teaching at the Sorbonne University in Paris. Very quickly his fame grew so big, both as a doctor and as a professor, that the Padua University wanted him back. They wanted him back as a professor of medicine in their own university. Of course, Peter d'Abano accepts and moved back to Padua in the 1306. A very quick note about the Padua University, because it's one of the oldest university in Europe. It was established in 1222, and almost at the same time, Albertus Magnus actually got his education in the same center, in the same institution. So obviously, the medical practice and medical studies of Peter d'Abano, having such a big luggage and such a big background from Averroes, from Avicenna, Hippocrates, he really applied a lot of astrology within his medical practice. So much astrology actually that this costed him to be tried by the Inquisition a couple of times. The first time he was able to actually get away with it, but the second time it was a little bit tougher, because he actually started to deny the existence of demons, or what they call the divine providence, and he started to give natural explanations for the so-called miracle that are described in the Bible. even to the point to where he said that even resurrection was not really a miracle, but actually resurrection were cases of what we would call today apparent death. So of course, during the second trial, and with this statement from his side, he wasn't able to get away, but he died before actually the trial was completed. And this is a little bit of sad and slash funny story, because as the church wasn't able to declare him heretic during his second trial, they actually picked up the case again some 40 years later, so 40 years after his death, due to the books attributed to him. So we're talking about Heptameron and other books attributed to him related to magic. So his case was picked up again, and finally, post-mortem, was actually defined as heretic by the church, and his body remains were supposed to be burned. And they were actually ordered to be burned. However, those remains were not found when they went to dig it out, because it seems that somebody actually was able to remove his remains right before the Inquisition went to look for them. So his teaching, his approach to medical studies are summarized in one of his most famous work, the Conciliatur Differentiarum quae inter philosophos et medicos versantur. Of course, is a Latin book. In this book, he promotes the use of astrology, enhance the effectiveness of the medical treatment, and the conciliator, which means to try to reconcile. The conciliator in the title stands for his attempt to reconcile the Arabic medicine, so the teaching from Averroes and Avicenna, to reconcile them with the Greek speculative natural philosophy. And here we're talking in particular about the Aristotelian teachings. For Peter d'Abano, astrology wasn't really anything mystical or religious. For him, astrology was just a part of what we would say like a natural reality, a legit part of the study of nature. So for him, the planets, the decans, the ascendants, so all the vocabulary that we can find in astrology, and there nothing referred to anything superior or superior entities or angels or whatever is beyond our world, but they were just natural entities. So being natural entities, there is an analogy between the astrological entities and other natural entities, including the mankind. In somehow he really anticipated what we would call today kind of a holistic approach to medicine. And for him, this astrological influence that are determined at the moment of birth will give to each individual his physical, characterial, body attributes, and for each single person, depending on the astrological position at the time of birth, the ascendants and the decans, with a very, very much more deeper study of astrology than what we would say as it is today. He also considered alchemy to be another essential study for medical practice. So alchemy and astrology, because alchemy, of course, you need to know the compounds in order to put them together and create medicines. So this is the alchemical studies. And you need to know also the astrology from when to actually determine the best timing to provide the treatments. So alchemy, astrology, and of course the knowledge of the human mind and the human body as much as we could have in the 1300. Another very important work of Peter D'Abano, we find it in the second part of the very famous Astrolabium Planum, one of the most famous astrological treatises of the Middle Age. The book was compiled by Johannes Angelus, but in the second part we find a collection of pictures showing the 360 degrees of the zodiacal belt with an explicative sentence for each of the degree of the zodiac by Peter D'Abano. So in this book basically he's presenting his theories on astrology and all the connection with the decans and the extra zodiacal constellation and other connections. These images, the images of the Astrolabium Planum, were then depicted in the walls of the Salone della Ragione in Padua. Actually, is a building, is still there. It's a beautiful building in the center of the city. And these astrological images were depicted in the walls and the ceiling of the palace by the famous Italian artist called Giotto. Unfortunately, most of the work was lost to a fire in the 1420, and it was restored pretty much according to the original structure in the 1440. And the cycle of frescoes are divided, of course, into 12 compartments, standing for the 12 zodiacal sign, starting with March, so Aries, and finishing with February, therefore Aquarius. And each compartment, each of the 12 sections, is divided into 3 lines for a total of 9 squares. And in these 9 squares are depicted all the relevant extra zodiacal correspondences to the month, like the decans. There's seasonal depictions, and what is really specific to Peter D'Abano theories, there is a depiction of the individual astrological correspondence, or the correspondence to the human character, or the topology, depending on the ascendant at the time of birth. So considering the theories and his ideas of Peter D'Abano related to what the astrology is and his denial of divine providence, angels and demons, it sounds a little bit strange that you would have to actually have authored a book such as the Heptameron being a specific actually grimoire for conjuring specific angels for the 7 days of the week. It's possible, but the Heptameron most likely is a little bit after his death, and most likely more on the line of the Tritemius Agrippa's line, more than Pietro D'Abano. Nevertheless, also to mention that the Heptameron, the invocation, the Latin invocation of the Heptameron, are then taken over again and again in many other grimoires, including the maybe the most famous Goetia of the Lemegeton, the Lesser Key of Solomon. So we found pretty much the same invocation with some slight changes. So this is pretty much it. We just saw a brief view of the life of Peter D'Abano. Thanks again for staying with me today, and I hope to see you soon again for the next video. In the meantime, I wish you a great day and see you soon. Bye.